Black, y'all, and I'm black, y'all, and I'm blacker than black, and I'm black, y'all, and I'm black, y'all, and I'm black, y'all, and I'm blacker than black, and I'm black, y'all.
I'm black, Afro-Trinidadian to be precise. And growing up, I always had some trouble with my black identity. I had an incomplete self-image, and that caused a lot of problems for me. You mix in racist stereotypes, negative media images, experiences of discrimination, microaggressions, and a little bit of colorism, and I really struggled. It took a while for me to reckon with my blackness. Even now, I still deal with questions of my existence, black existence, on this tumultuous earth. What is black existentialism? Existentialism, as the broader European philosophy, was a movement that stressed the individual's unique position as a self-determining agent responsible for making meaningful, authentic choices in a universe seen as purposeless or irrational. It explores the very nature of existence by emphasizing the experience of the human subject, a thinking, feeling, acting, living, human individual. Life naturally brings forth existential angst, a sense of disorientation, confusion, and anxiety in the face of an apparently absurd world. Black existentialism shares similar concerns and themes with European existentialism, like existence, consciousness, trepidation, meaninglessness, hopelessness, fear, despair, civility, and abasement. But there are important distinctions between them. European existentialism is predicated on the uniqueness of the individual and a universalist conception of humans and their obligation to self. Black existential philosophy is based on global black liberation from oppression. Black existential philosophy came out of the wider Africana philosophical movement. Africana philosophy comes from the body of work penned by African and African-descended peoples, speaking on the experiences and struggles of the diaspora. As Lewis Gordon explained in an introduction to Africana philosophy, it involves the theoretical questions raised by critical engagements with ideas in Africana cultures and their hybrid, mixed, or creolized forms worldwide. The African identity was imposed after, not before, conquest and colonization. Thus, Africana tackles the unique set of questions raised by the emergence of this group. While discussing double consciousness, Paul Gilroy describes the Atlantic slave trade as the foundation of the diaspora. In the Black Atlantic, he argues that there exists a unifying Black Atlantic culture, born out of the transnational exchanges and influences between African, American, British, and Caribbean cultures. Central to Black existentialism is the notion of double consciousness. First coined by E B Dubois, double consciousness refers to the internal conflict experienced by subordinated or colonized groups in an oppressive society. Dubois wrote of the idea in The Souls of Black Folk in 1897, as he grappled with the psychological challenge of always looking at oneself through the eyes of a racist white society and measuring oneself by the means of a nation that looked back in contempt.
One feels his two-ness, an American, a Negro, two souls, two thoughts, two unreconciled strivings, two warring ideals in one dark body whose dogged strength alone keeps it from being torn asunder.
In the first chapter of Our Spiritual Strivings, Dubois also coined the metaphor of the veil.
In those somber forests of his striving, his own soul rose before him, and he saw himself, darkly as through a veil. And yet he saw in himself some faint revelation of his power, of his mission. He began to have a dim feeling that, to attain his place in the world, he must be himself and not another.
According to Dubois, this veil is worn by all African Americans, and I would say all African-descended people, because their view of the world and its potential economic, political, and social opportunities are so vastly different from those of white people. Dubois discussed how the inner life of Black people, the soul, manifested in Black music. In fact, before each chapter of The Souls of Black Folk, a bar of the Sorrow Songs was printed, music birthed from the Black souls of a dark past. Paul Gilroy also spoke about music, highlighting how artistic expression was and is a means of exploring the transient nature of Blackness, as Black expression and community is shared beyond borders. And speaking of the past, Dubois noted that history is misrepresented to favor white supremacy and colonialism. Black people have been degraded in the textbooks to mere passive objects rather than makers of history, all to deny the struggle for freedom in favor of constructing a narrative of American freedom, one that was so fundamentally exclusionary from its very inception. This all played into the image that would define the contradictions inherent in one's double consciousness. Confusions about one's past, identity, and culture were all tackled by Frantz Fanon in Black Skin, White Masks. Fanon describes how the confusions birthed in the minds of colonized black folks leads to many attempting to assimilate completely into whiteness, while others attempt to reject it entirely. In an attempt to appropriate and imitate the culture of the colonizer, one dons a white mask. He spoke of black Caribbean people who leave for Europe or America and come back speaking completely differently, or how wealthier black folks purchase European furniture, clothes, and commodities, all to try to fit white society. But in seeking white acceptance, one must necessarily accept whiteness as the standard, the measure that one must be judged against. The sad part is, white folks are still going to put black people in a box, no matter how wealthy or educated. A normal black kid in a normal black family is still abnormal in a white world. A white world that unconsciously associates blackness with wrongness. There is no positive model for blackness in a white world, so black folks are placed in an alienated relationship with all that it means to be human. Cornel West, in Race Matters, noted that the danger of black suffering is that it could lead to a sense of pointlessness of black existence and a lack of self-worth. West confronted nihilism, which he describes as
the lived experience of coping with a life of horrifying meaninglessness, hopelessness, and, most important, lovelessness. The frightening result is a numbing detachment from others and a self-destructive disposition toward the world. Life without meaning, hope, and love breeds a cold-hearted, mean-spirited outlook that destroys both the individual and others.
But there is a difference between the nihilism that Cornel West was discussing and black nihilism. Calvin L. Warren discussed the concept in his essay, Black Nihilism and the Politics of Hope. Black nihilism rejects emancipatory rhetoric that assumes it's possible to purge politics from anti-blackness. It sees political, or I suppose more accurately, electoral hope as pointless. Because, as Warren argues, black suffering is an essential part of the world, putting hope in the very structure that sustains that violence will never resolve anything. Whiteness, as a social construct, is the foundation on which anti-blackness is grounded. He goes on.
Black emancipation is world destructive. Pulverized black bodies sustain the world, its institutions, economic systems, environment, theologies, philosophies. Because anti-blackness infuses itself into every fabric of social existence, it is impossible to emancipate blacks without literally destroying the world.
Meanwhile, William R. Jones was arguing for black anti-theology. He believed in a humanistic response to black suffering, rejecting theology and advocating for black folks to take their lives and history into their own hands and build a better future for humankind. He wasn't opposed to religion. He was fine with black people who believed in and loved God, but his point is they should not rely on God for the elimination of injustice on earth. But in all this discussion of injustice, something was lacking. Something that took the contributions of black feminists to bring to light. Triple consciousness. Black women not only have to see themselves through the lens of blackness and whiteness, but also through the lens of patriarchy. Deborah Gray White put it best.
African American women are confronted with an impossible task. If she is rescued from the myth of the Negro, the myth of the woman traps her. If she escapes the myth of the woman, the myth of the Negro still ensnares her.
Francis M. Beale not only recognized the way that capitalism was wielded to destroy the humanity of black people, but also noted,
in any society where men are not yet free, women are less free because we are further enslaved. Because we are enslaved by our sex. Many African American women turned towards feminism in their fight against oppression because there was an awareness that they were being treated as second-class citizens within the civil rights movement of the 60s. Many women felt that they were being asked to choose between a black movement that primarily served the interests of black male patriarchs and a women's movement which primarily served the interests of racist white women.
Triple consciousness tackles the intersecting identity of gender that impacts a person's experiences. Understanding it is key to the larger fight. There's so much more to black existentialism and exploration of identity. far beyond the scope of this video, but I hope you've come away with a wider understanding of the philosophy. Black emancipation is not an easy battle, but in honor of all those who came before, and in a desire to realize my fullest self, I'll continue to read, to research, to explore, to carry the torch, and I hope you will too. Peace. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, and share. Special thanks to Xenia and Car for lending their voices for this video. Check out their channels, the links are in the description below. Check out my previous videos for other fascinating topics. Follow me on Twitter @_SaintDrew and maybe send me some money and buy me a coffee. I'm also publishing blog posts every Tuesday around noon on medium.com/@saint.drew. Thanks again and peace.